Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of X-Max Warframe. Today we cannot hold off reviewing this weapon any longer, with it being one of my most requested weapons for me to max, the Boltor Prime. Now the Boltor Prime is a weapon that needs no real introduction, as quite frankly it's one of, if not the most popular weapon in the game at this current time, and it's easy to see why. With a base damage of 55, 49.5 of which comes in the form of puncture, and 5.5 in the form of impact, and it makes the hardest hitting, fully automatic assault rifle in the game. And when you couple that with a pretty decent fire rate of 10 rounds a second and a fairly average 10% status chance, very low and easy to control recoil, and a decent magazine size, it all comes together to make one of the strongest assault rifles in the game, and a very significant upgrade to the base model Boltor. It's not without its disadvantages, however. Most notably is the flight speed on the bolts. This is a weapon that's not just to pick up and play and be immediately awesome with it. You have to get used to the way the bolts fly and get used to the travel speed before it becomes the high damaging beast that everyone's familiar with. Another downside is the very low critical chance of just 5%, which is below average when you compare it to the other similar assault rifles. Even if a weapon isn't modded for critical chance, a higher critical chance means you're going to get that damage multiplier more often, significantly increasing the damage output of the weapon. But to be honest, none of these downsides are anywhere near enough to make this weapon hard to use or even less effective. It's just something to bear in mind when looking at the weapon. Now the weapon itself drops from the Oricon Void and actually drops in a high number of places, as you can see on the left hand side of your screen now. I'm not going to go through all the locations as there are quite a few, and the advantage of so many places to farm the parts means that you're not necessarily tied to the same mission type over and over again to get the parts. Plus, often you're going to pick up the parts when farming for another Void weapon. The thing about the Boltor Prime is that because it only needs 4 bits to build, 1 blueprint and 3 parts, it does mean that it does come with a fairly hefty 10 Orokin cells to be able to build, which can be a bit of a pain to farm unless you know exactly where to go for them. Okay, so we've had a look at some of the stats of the Boltor Prime. Let's move on to how we're going to mod it. Now it comes with a V and a D as standard. However, we're going to add 6 formers to the weapon. The first thing we would do is get rid of the D, and we're going to make sure that the weapon ends up with 4 Vs and 3 dashes. Now we've got 5 mods that are going to remain the same between all 3 of our builds. We've got Serration for damage, Split Chamber for multi-shot, Heavy Caliber, which is going to boost both the physical and the elemental damage, and the accuracy loss really is not noticeable very much on this weapon at all. We're going to add Shred for that fire rate buff, as well as, probably more importantly, that punch through on the weapon, which is very underestimated. And then Piercing Caliber to further buff that puncture damage, and this is an event mod, so if you don't have this, then another elemental damage. It's not going to be as effective, but then it's definitely going to be still worth having it on the weapon. Now for our Grenadier build, we're going to go with a viral and heat build. Because of the amount of puncture, it will be very good against those heavily armoured units, so we're going to focus on more of the fleshier bits of those Grenadier. And we're going to go with viral with Infector Clip and Cryo rounds, and also Hellfire to do additional damage to that cloned flesh. Now this is also the same build that we're going to use for the Void if we're using the 4x Corrosive Projection Aura mod. Now for the Corpus, we're going to go with the Stormbringer and Cryo rounds to bring up magnetic damage, and Infected Clip for that extra toxin damage against the fleshier units. And for the Infested, and if you're not using the Corrosive Projection build in the Void, this will also work for the Void. Stormbringer and Infected Clip to bring up the corrosive damage, and also that extra heat damage as well there. Okay, so now on to my recommendation as to whether I feel the Boltor Prime is worth the farm, worth the former, and the time invested into it, and the answer is, and always will be, that it absolutely is worth it. Back when I started Warframe nearly 2 years ago now, which is a scary thought, the first things I farmed in the game with my friends was Nyx and the Boltor. In fact, once I had those two, I spent probably nearly the next 6 months playing with only that combination. So you can imagine my excitement when the Boltor Prime came out, and I was not disappointed. Arguably right now the Boltor Prime is the strongest weapon in the game, and fighting with the Synoid Gammacore for that title. That combination of raw damage and that fire rate is a combo to be feared. Now I know some people have been wondering why I've not actually done this Lex Max video for a Boltor Prime, bearing in mind how popular it is. And there's actually a pretty simple answer to that. I genuinely don't use it. I actually only put the last former on this in the last week or so, which I can hear you asking why this is the case when I love the original Boltor so much. And that's purely because I don't like using the strongest weapons in the game. Personally, I find that it takes most of the fun out of the game for me. I'd rather take a weapon that is absolutely underrated and comes out top damage in a game with it, above those using Boltor Primes. That's what makes the game fun for me, taking weapons that are often viewed as useless and doing amazing things with them. Now, I'm not saying that you're a bad person or that you're boring for using the Boltor Prime. You do whatever you feel is fun in this game. Don't let others tell you how to have fun. This is just how I keep the game fresh after playing for 2,000 hours and having nothing left to do but to form weapons. But in all honesty, I digress. There are a couple of options when it comes to modding the Boltor Prime. Primarily it comes down to that shred mod. Shred does mean the ammo consumption can be very high, unless you pay close attention to your ammo. Some people solve this with ammo mutation, although personally I would say that since this is only going to be a problem in those long run missions, like survival or defense, then ammo restore is probably going to be more use to you than losing a mod slot for that ammo mutation. Also, changing out that shred mod for another elemental is an option, although I'd say that shred is going to be better in the long run, especially since the punch through is something that's going to be extremely useful, and honestly something that is seriously underestimated. So in essence, amazing damage, great fire rate and a very manageable recoil and flight speed. The Boltor Prime really is on top of the pile of the assault rifles and arguably one of, if not the strongest weapon in the game right now. It's a worthy addition to your arsenal and will never let you down if you need to go long into a mission. Okay, quick thing from me, I'm not far from the massive achievement of 1,000 subs, and as such I want to do something special for that episode. So one thing I'd love to do is to do a Q&A special. If you've got a question for me, please post it in this video and I'll choose the best and most upvoted questions for that 1,000 sub special and answer them for you. I'll probably also do a live stream that weekend, so feel free to follow on Twitch and you'll get a notification when I go live. And as always, a huge thanks for the support. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton. And I shall see you in the next episode.